This video is sponsored by Stream. Stream helps you to build scalable chat and activity feeds for your application. Stream also takes care of security, hosting, and scaling so you can focus more on the functionality and building high-quality applications. Check out their SDKs for many different platforms. They have iOS with Swift and iOS with SwiftUI, Flutter, Android, React, React Native, and so much more. To learn more about Stream, check the link in the description for more information. Hello everyone. So let's go ahead and get started. Now before diving into the implementation details, let's go ahead and take a look at what we will be building in this multi-part series. On the left-hand side, you can see the Reminders Mac application. I have already added a couple of lists. And on the right-hand side, this is my actual phone, the screen of my actual physical phone. Both are linked together using CloudKit and iCloud. The data is stored in core data and synced using CloudKit. Let's go ahead and get started. What I'm going to do is I'm going to go ahead and add a brand new list using my phone. We can call this list anything you want. Let's just call it fun. And we can assign some color to it. You can see that I have added now a list called fun. It contains 0 items. Currently, on the Mac side, the list doesn't appear because when you're using CloudKit, it's not like instantly it's going to appear. It's going to take a little bit of time for the list to appear. Now, the time will be dependent on when the CloudKit is fetching the data and syncing it. So right now, as you can see, the list still does not appear on the macOS application, but it does appear on the iOS. And now you can see the list appearing. Let's go to the list. Now the list is there. I can go to the list and I can add some item. So let's just say go for swimming. That sounds like fun. You can see that right now the item has been increased over here, but the item is still saying 0. Again, it's going to take a little bit of more time to update the item. I can even go inside the item and you can see it currently doesn't display anything. After a couple of seconds, you can see that now I can see the list being displayed or the item go for swimming being displayed on my phone. Now let's use the phone to add a new item. How about eat ice cream? So I've added that into a fun category or fun list. You can see on the Mac app, it's not really appearing instantly, but it will again take a little bit of time and it will go on and it will appear. Meanwhile, I'll just go and add some more items to the fun list. Go for hiking. Hiking is always fun, so let's go ahead and do that. Or watch a movie. So I'm adding a couple of different items. You can see all of those items are being stored on the core data on the iOS application, and they will eventually start appearing on the macOS side. So let's just wait for a minute and hopefully they will start appearing. Meanwhile, if we go to the groceries, you can see that there are different items in the groceries. I can go ahead and select the item and those items will be removed. The fun list over here on the macOS, currently you can see a couple of seconds have already passed by, but it is still not updating. It will update eventually. Sometime it can take maybe 10, 15, 20, even 30 seconds to update the list. On the iPhone, I can go back and let's check out the groceries. You can see that I still see those grocery items, right? But in reality, I think we deleted those grocery items because we have marked them for completion. Again, since we're using CloudKit and iCloud with core data sync, it is going to take a little bit more time to update that list. But eventually, you will see that it will come through. But that eventually is questionable. There we go. You can see that the fun section is now populated. Still on the iPhone, there we go. You can see it's been removed. So it does take a couple of even seconds, maybe even 20, 30 seconds, depending on exactly when the sync is taking place. So that is exactly what we will be building in this video, and this will be a multi-part series. So let's go ahead and get started. All right, everyone. So now that you know that what we will be building, let's go ahead and get started. When you launch your Xcode and select iOS, you can see the app template, or you can select the macOS and see the app template. But since we are trying to target this for iOS as well as macOS, we can either use multi-platform or you can use an empty project. I try to use empty project because I want to add things on my own, so let's go with empty project. The product name will be, let's call it Reminders. And we can even call it Reminders app if you want to, but I'll just leave it as Reminders. Where do you want to store it? Desktop is fine. There we go. So now we have created an empty project. An empty project actually does mean an empty project. I mean, it doesn't really have anything. So now what we want to do is we want to add multiple targets to it. There can be one target for your iOS application. So let's go ahead and select an iOS app. And we can call this Reminders for iOS. Make sure that the interface is set to SwiftUI and the language is Swift. That's perfectly fine. And that's our first target. Since we also want to target macOS, I'm going to go ahead and add macOS also. So editor, add target, and let's select macOS. And we will go with app. And we will say Reminders for macOS. Perfect. So now we have iOS and we have macOS. Both are great. We also want a lot of files and data to be shared. So I'm just going to go ahead and add a group and I will call it shared. This is where all the code will go for things that we meant to share between the iOS target and the macOS target. All right, so that's great. I think we're off to a good start in at least creating our structure. Now, one of the things that we will have to check over here is that we also need to add a model for core data. Let's go ahead and go to full screen now. And the model should be available in both of them. Now, that does not mean that the model will be shared between both of them. The model meaning that on the macOS, you will have a model for core data, and then it will be locally saved on the macOS app, while the core data model for iOS will be saved on the iOS on the physical device or on the simulator. So that's why I'm going to go ahead and add a new model. And we're looking for a data model. Let's go ahead and go to next. And now we need to come up with a name for the model. The model will be shared, that is fine. And we can call it Reminders model. This is the core data model that we're creating. And there we go. That's what it looks like when you're creating the core data model. Now in the core data model, and at least in this part of the video, because it's a multi-series or a multi-part video, we want to target the list that you're creating, which means it can be a grocery list, it can be a YouTube videos list, it can be things to do list, reminders list, and so on. So we're going to go ahead and add an entity to represent a particular list. So I'm just going to go over here and add an entity. You can call your entity anything you want. I'm just going to call it my list. And now I have to work for the attributes. What do I want to save in my list? Obviously the name of the list. So that's a no-brainer, right? We definitely need the name. Let's go ahead and make it string. And this is not really optional. So we will make sure that this is not optional. All right. And right now we're only focusing on storing it on the device itself. So we are not thinking about CloudKit or syncing or anything like that. We will cover that later on. So we're only thinking about how can we store into SQLite database, which is a default for core data. Now, the other thing that we want to do when we are making a list is we want to store a color that is represented by a list. So a list can have many different colors, right? So how do we store the color? If you go ahead and store the color as a transformable object, which is right there, the problem with this approach will be that what are you going to put over here in the custom class? Or will you store a UI color or NS color? So that can become a problem, right? If you are trying to store NS color, then you won't be able to use it in UIKit application or SwiftUI application. If you are storing it as UI color, then you won't be able to use it in your macOS application because you're serializing it. So instead of storing color itself, what we will do is store the actual code for the color. And we will go ahead and select a string. All right. Now let's go ahead and make sure that this is also not optional. So you have to provide some sort of a color, or we will just basically store some default color. But right now, we're just going to put it as non-optional. Let's go ahead and build our application. Okay, looks like it is building at least correctly. So that's good news. The next thing we need to do is we need to find out that if we run the application, what screen we will see. So starting with the actual iOS application right here, and let's go ahead and minimize the font size. There we go. We want to create kind of like a home screen that will display the home screen of the application. So right now we have a content view over here, but we can definitely change that and call this a screen. So I'm just going to go ahead and new group, and I will call it screens. Now you can see that I'm not adding screens inside the shared folder because this is a very particular screen that is only for the iPhone. So I'm going to go ahead and add a new view, SwiftUI view, and I will call it home screen. This particular home screen will only be available for iOS application because for macOS application, we will add a separate file that will represent a screen. And we're not really going to use the content view, so we can go ahead and delete that. Since we deleted the content view, we have to update our reminders iOS app file, and we can say that our initial screen or the launch screen will be home screen. That is our view. That's what we want to display. The same exact thing we can do for macOS application. So I'm going to go over here and create a screens folder. And inside the screens folder, we will go ahead and add a screen. So I'm just going to go ahead and say home screen. And this is only for macOS. So that's perfect. We don't really want to add iOS over here. I'm just going to go ahead and add the screen. And the same thing, I don't really want to use content view. I'm just going to go ahead and update this and say that this is a home screen. Not really importing iOS. Not sure why it's importing over iOS because we already have the screen. There we go. Okay. Double check it that if this is only available, actually let me go ahead and set the target to macOS, and I will have to make sure this is only available for macOS. So always make sure that the target is set correctly. Okay, so that looks fine. Now let's move to iOS side. Now on the iOS side, on the home screen, what I really want to do is I want to go ahead and display the contents. So basically the home screen will be responsible for displaying the list of items, the list of basically my list, like reminders. It can be YouTube videos list, a fun list that you saw earlier on, and things like that. All right, so I'm going to go over here in the home screen. I'm going to start with a navigation view. And then inside the navigation view, I will have a VStack. we can also go ahead and add a navigation title, and we can say my list. Perfect. Okay, for the VStack, what should we do? Well, we should probably go ahead and allow the user to display some sort of a list, right? So I can go ahead and display a list. Now, this is obviously, you can see I'm just hard coding it. I always like to start very, very slowly and build on the app. So I will have something to display. So I'm just building something, and I would say item number or list number. We will call it my list number something, and that can be index. All right, so this is what it actually displays right now. Let's go ahead and see what's going on over here. Not this part. There we go. Hopefully that should be okay. There we go. So we can display a list of items. All right. Now, this is the same kind of a list that we will display on our macOS. I mean, the left side or the left pane of the macOS, if the macOS app is kind of like this list is displayed over here, right? So what we can do is probably we can create some sort of a reusable control, reusable view, which can allow us to use this list. So I'm going to go inside my shared folder and add a new, not file, but a folder, because I want to arrange it in a nice way. I'm going to add views. And inside the views, I'm going to add a control, a SwiftUI, and we can call it my list view. All right, that is going to display all the list. And this will be available in both the targets because both of them will be sharing it. Let's go ahead and create it. I already wrote some code, so probably I can just go ahead and use that code right here. Although you can actually see this code is not creating a real list, it's just a fake list of 20 items. Let's go back to our home screen and try to see if I can use my list view. The result should be same because it's all hard-coded list, so that's fine, right? Okay, so this looks fine. Now let's see how this works on a macOS application. So I'm going to go ahead and change the target to macOS and jump onto the home screen of the macOS. So for the macOS, it will display in a split pane. So again, I'm going to start. First of all, let me go ahead and see how it actually looks like if I resume the preview. All right, so let's see if it loads correctly. We have selected the macOS target, so that is good. And hopefully it will come up with something. Okay, looks like it's having trouble creating the preview for some reason. No, still doesn't like this. Okay, we will have to see what exactly is going on. All right, so after building it again, it's successful, and now you can see our preview for macOS application. In the macOS application, I'm also going to start with a navigation view. So let's go ahead and start with a navigation view. And as soon as I add the navigation view, you can see that this is now looking really, really good. I mean, it has already created a split pane view, which is pretty cool, right? Now on the left side, this side, we want to display the sidebar, and we want to display basically the actual list, my list view. And on the right hand side, this part, we will display the details like the actual items in the list, which we will figure out later on. Now, instead of creating the sidebar or creating, something like displaying a list over here, it's always a good idea to add a new view to display the sidebar. And the reason is that you may want to add some search capability in the sidebar. And the sidebar should only be available to the macOS. So reminder macOS app, just going to add sidebar. So what will happen in the sidebar? We are going to go ahead and add a vertical list or vertical stack. And now I can say my list view, the one that we created earlier on, and that is part of the shared. Let's go back to the home screen and add a sidebar. Again, the main reason of adding a sidebar is that sidebar is going to give us a little bit more control over if I want to create or add a search bar, then I can just go to the sidebar view and I can add that. And I can also go ahead and add details over here. Now that is going to appear as the detail view. So you can already see that our list is getting reused, the one that we just created earlier on. Obviously, this is a hard-coded list. We haven't really figured out a way to display the real list. So at least we have set it up, or we have set up creating this or displaying this list. All right. So now let's go ahead and move to, well, how do we start adding a list? How do we provide the user to how they can add the list and so on? So I'm going to go into my iOS application. There we go. That's my iOS application, which is displaying the list. And in my iOS application, now I have to work on adding the button to show them a way that they can add a list. The first thing I'm going to do is I'm going to add a divider. And let's go ahead and select all, Control I to format it. So let's see if the divider actually displays. I think it's right there at the bottom somewhere. We can add a button also. Add list. Okay, there we go. The add list is appearing. We do want the add list button to be appearing a little bit onto the trailing side. So I'm just going to put the maximum width to be infinity and then alignment to be trailing. Okay, a little bit padding needed, I guess. So we can go ahead and add some padding. Okay, there we go. All right. Now, when we add or when we click on add list, what we want to do is we want to open up a modal or a sheet. In order to open up a sheet, the first thing we're going to do is we're going to create a private variable is presented. We will set it to Boolean false. As soon as you click on the button, we will change this is presented false to true. And now we can actually hook it up to the sheet because sheet depends on a bindable is presented property. So basically, it's basically saying that provide me with a bindable Boolean. There we go, bindable Boolean. So I'm going to go ahead and provide something called is presented. On dismiss, when the sheet is dismissed, do you want to do something? Probably not. I mean, I'm not interested in doing anything. We may not even need the dismiss part of it. So I can just remove the dismissal part. For the content part, we can use the trailing closure. And this should return you some sort of a view that you want to display that will allow you to show add new list view. So right now, I'm just going to go ahead and say add new list view. All right. Let's go ahead and try to run this. And okay, I can scroll. Let's go ahead and click on add list. And there we go. It actually shows us some sort of a view which allows us to add. So it's basically a modal or a sheet that shows up. Now, obviously, this is simply a text control that we have created or a text view. We need to create some sort of a add new list view that will allow us to basically add a new view. So let's go ahead and do that. And we also do plan to share that particular control so that the macOS app can also use it. So I'm going to go ahead and add a brand new view to the shared because we want to share it with both of them. And I will call it add new list view. Let's create it. Okay, so what will be the purpose of add new list view? The purpose of add new list view will be to allow the user to be able to add a new list. So that can be reminders, grocery list, whatever comes to your mind. Let's go ahead and start with a VStack. We are also going to do a little bit of alignment, and we will say leading alignment with a little bit of spacing to be, let's say, 20. All right. Now, when we're creating this particular add list view, we will also allow the user to cancel or done. So these are the two different options. So I just want to put it kind of like somewhere on the top. So let's go ahead and put the cancel option. All right. And we will give it some sort of a frame. There we go. Let's put a spacer right here so it pushes everything on the top. There we go. All right. And when you press the cancel, since this will be used or displayed in a modal, we want to hide the modal. So this means that we can access the environment value for presentation mode, and you can simply go ahead and say presentation mode dot wrap value dot dismiss. I think there's a shortcut also, but I always use that, but you can also do it in a different way. The other button that we need will be the done button, meaning you have written some sort of a task and you want to save it, some sort of a reminder, meaning like a my list. Once that particular button is pressed, we're also going to save it. A couple of things will go with the done button. The done button will only be activated when you're actually typing something in the text box. We don't really have a text box. I'm just going to pass it false for now, but I will change that later on. And the done button will be on the right-hand side, meaning the trailing. I also want to add a bit of a padding to my VStack. So let's go ahead and check out the VStack. Get a little bit of padding going. There we go. Looks much nicer already. And the maximum height and the maximum width of the VStack can also be a little bit different. We'll also provide a little bit of background color also. Okay, so this is great. The next thing we need to do is we have a spacer already. We will also allow the user to select an image and also obviously type in the name of the list they're trying to add. For the list name, we can create a state variable that can gather that particular list name. And whatever the color that they're selecting, it is going to go into a state property called color. Next up, we will allow the user to see what they are actually, the image that we want to display, and also the text box. Now you can see that currently it's going to complain that where is this constant file coming from? Don't worry about it. I'm just going to add it in 2 seconds. Let's go ahead and add this constant file. This is just a file that is going to give you access to the name of the icons. So let's go ahead and add a new folder, and I will call it utils. And in the utils, I'm just going to add a new file called constants. And constant file is simply a file that contains constant or hard-coded values. So you will see when I paste it, you will see that it's simply nothing more than the name of icons. There we go. So now I can say constants.icons.plusCircle, and I will get the plus circle icon. Let's go ahead and build the application and see what it looks like. Okay, looking good. You can see that it's giving us this particular icon, and the selected color by default is just green, but we should be able to allow the user to select a different color. All right. Now currently we don't have anything that will allow the user to select the color. So we need to do that also. So I'm going to go ahead and create a VStack over here, and I will write comment over here that I need to display a color picker view. So now we need to implement the color picker view. I've already discussed how to create the color picker view in some of my older videos, so you can definitely search for that. But right now, what we're going to do is we are simply going to pick the color picker view. We're going to check it out, and we are just going to use it. So in the views, I'm going to add a new file. SwiftUI view is fine. I will call it color picker view. And I'm just going to go ahead and paste the color picker view, and we can go over it. I don't want to type it out again because I think we have discussed this in a different videos, so we can definitely take a look at it. It's not that complicated actually. The color picker view, you can see that it comes with these default 4 or 5 colors. In the color picker view, you need to send in the selected color as a binding, which means that whenever the selected color is set, then the person or the caller will also get a refresh. Depending on the selected color, we are either going to select, or you can see that we are either going to display a small dot for the selected color, or we're just going to show the full color. So if I go ahead and say over here blue, so you will see that the blue one is the one with a dot, this, which is indicating that this is selected. Okay, so now we have this color picker view. We should be able to go and display it in our add new list view control. Color picker view, selected color. We can pass in the selected color as a bindable expression, the one that we just created right there. And now we can go ahead and set some sort of a font if you want the font to be a little bit different. And we can also style a little bit more for our VStack. So VStack, we can add a little bit more styling. Okay, looking actually very good, right? So now you can see that we have the color picker view, we have a list name. Let's go ahead and actually run the application so that we can see it in action. You can see that I can go ahead and select a particular color. Whenever I select the color, it reflects over here in the image, and I should be able to go ahead and create any list that I want. I can press the done button, but it's not really going to do anything. So that's the next thing that we want to work on, that when we press the done button, this particular add new list view is going to give us the selected color as well as a new list name to the person who created it, and then they will save it. So in order to do that, I'm going to go ahead and create onSave as a closure where you can pass in the string and the string. Now, why the string and the string? I mean, are we not saving the color? We are saving the color, but remember that when we go to the reminders model, we eventually want to save the color as a string. So we need the color code, like a hex code for that color. I will use some predefined, already implemented hex code libraries to convert the color into the hex color. All right. So let's go ahead and create that. I think I've created it over here. That should be okay. And it's going to complain in our preview because now we need to implement this part. So let's go ahead and implement that. Since it's a trailing closure, I can simply go ahead and do something like this, which means I will get the new. Actually, we don't really care this much about over here in the preview, so I can just pass in whatever. There we go. If I try to build the application, okay, it builds fine. The reason is that we haven't really used the add new list. And once the button is pressed, this is where we will perform the onSave. All right, so you can see that the add new list view is not really performing the save operation on its own. It is going to fire this closure, and it will give the selected or the new list name as well as the selected color to home screen, and the home screen will be responsible for saving the color. This will allow us to make this more reusable. All right. All right, so the next step that we want to do is to perform onSave. So we already have the closure for onSave, but onSave does take two different things, right? So we can go ahead and select or pass in new list name, and we can try to pass in the selected color, but it's not really going to work because we are saying that onSave you need to pass it as a string, not as a color. So what should we do? Well, we need to find a way to convert this particular color into hex. So I'm going to go ahead and add some extensions that will allow us to do that. I have gotten this code from somewhere, and I will try and post the link because I forgot where I got it. It's not written by me, but I'm just going to go ahead and add an extensions. And I'm going to go ahead and add this particular code, which takes in a color and then it changes it to hex code, which is pretty cool. So I'm just going to go ahead and say color plus extensions. Okay. In this extension, I'm going to go ahead and perform the extension for the color. And this color is coming from SwiftUI. So let's go ahead and import SwiftUI. That's the SwiftUI color basically that we're talking about. All right. So there are a couple of different things we will need to implement, and that's the part that I'm talking about, that I got it from somewhere. So let's go ahead and add color from Hex function and a color components from function. All right, so there we go. And we are going to create a property hex that will allow us to get the hex values. So var hex, which stands for hex code, we are going to start with components. Now the problem is that if you are working with macOS, then you want to convert it to NS color, and if you are working on iOS, then you want to convert it to or from the UI color to the color. So we will have to figure that out. We can use the if OS is macOS, then go ahead and get me the NS color. So NS color using self, which is an instance of the color, and we will get the components by simply saying nscolor.cgcolor.components. All right. And if or else if the OS is iOS, then we will use a little bit different approach because there is no NS color. We will use a UI color. We will initialize UI color using self, and we will get the components, which is from UI color dot cg color dot components. All right. Now this particular hex function doesn't really return anything. So once we get the components, which basically means the red, green, and the blue, we can convert it and we can send it on its way. Make sure that you are also ending this with end if. And there we go. So this is hopefully going to allow you to convert a color, a selected color, into hex. And now we can go back to our code and we can call the onSave function and pass the hex value. Perfect, right? So this is done inside the add new list view. We need to make sure that we are presenting this view both for the iOS application as well as the macOS application. So if I go to the home screen, currently in the home screen for iOS, you can see that we are not even using the add new list view. So I'm just going to go ahead and say add new list view. And you can see that I need to pass in onSave, but since it's a trailing closure, or since this is the only closure, I can go ahead and say get the actual this thing, get the color code, and then now we can perform the save. Right, so we still haven't really figured out how the save is going to function, but let's go ahead and see that if we can even go to the add new list view and select a particular color and enter the name. If I'm going to run the iOS application, I can go and click on add list, and wow, it actually does print slides out. If I say cancel, it cancels out. Let's go ahead and write something over here. One of the things you will see over here is that the done button is already active. I haven't really written anything in the list name, so that's not good. Let's go ahead and fix that. Over here, you can see the disable is actually false, but disable should be dynamic, meaning it's false if the new list name is empty, meaning that you haven't really written anything in the new list name text box. With those changes, let's go back again. And now you can see that the done button is disabled. But as soon as I add some sort of a list, it actually does get enabled, and I can say done, and it goes away. So it looks like it's working. It's not really saving anything because we still have to implement the save part, but at least it's working as the way that we will expect. And now we can go to the home screen and we can implement this the same way. Let's go ahead and change the target to macOS. And what we want to do is inside the sidebar, we would like to have the same functionality. We would like to add some sort of a button that we can use. All right. So inside we have the actual sidebar. Let's go to the sidebar. We have this particular view. Right over here, I can go ahead and add a button. And we want to give it a little bit more different kind of a button, like something with an image. So for the action, I'm just going to leave it action blank for now. And for the actual label, I'm just going to go ahead and create an image. And we can use a system-wide image. All right, so we can use probably constants.icons. Maybe there's a plus circle, so we can use plus circle. And the text can be anything. So I'm just going to go ahead and say add list. And if you want, you can definitely add a button style to it. So I'm just going to go ahead and add button style will be plain. And we can also provide a little bit more padding. Okay. Another thing that we will do is we will assign this alignment to be leading. So everything is kind of like on the left side. There we go. It looks good now. You can actually see that the button is there. It looks nice. When we click the button, we want to present a modal. All right, so basically a sheet. So it's going to be the same exact way. I'm going to go ahead over here and create is presented. And finally, I can go ahead and add the sheet, which is going to look exactly like the code that we have written. So let's go ahead and add the sheet. There we go. We will save it eventually. Okay, let's run this application, which is our, here we go, macOS application. Looks fine. We can scroll through the items. If I select add list, nothing is going on. Well, that's because we didn't really do anything in the action of the button. So let's go ahead and change that. I'm going to say is presented equals to true. Okay, so let's go ahead and select add item. Oh, and this actually pops up. Cancel. It cancels it out. Very good. We can go ahead and type something over here. You can see that I can type, let's say, groceries. I can select something and I can play done button. Okay, everything looks like it's working pretty good, right? And we were able to reuse our add new list view. So that is also very good. The next thing that we want to do is we want to focus on how can we save this item to the database. Save the my list to the database. So that is something that we will do in the next video. So we have set up a lot of different stuff And we want to do that in the next video because this video is already getting too long, right? So we're definitely going to do that. In the next video, we will be able to save the my list to the database. All right. Thank you so much and stay tuned for more.